Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. And this is our 200th episode, our top 5 episodes and why they resonate. I thought it would be great for this 200th episode to go through and pick out the 5 most popular episodes that we have. So they're either downloaded the most, they're listened to the most, they've been shared the most often. And what we're going to do with these episodes today is I just want to walk through these 5 and say why these contents resonate or why people keep going back to these episodes. What are some things that we need to know about scholarly writing? And then I've got a couple of 200th episode celebration things at the end. So hopefully this will be an enjoyable episode today. I know a lot of you have been with us since the beginning, so I don't even remember when we recorded our first episode, but it's been at least 2 years, so we've been around for a while. I haven't missed a week yet, so hopefully that won't happen. Fingers crossed that we can do it for another 100. This particular episode, as I mentioned, is episode 200. I do have slides for it if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or Libsyn or any of the places where you can get our episodes. But the screens are just basically screenshots of those episodes. So that way someone on YouTube can actually see a little bit of the description and why they are resonating with everyone. So number 5, so we're going to do a countdown from 5 to 1. I've never done a countdown on the podcast before, so I thought that would be kind of fun. But number 5 is one of our oldest episodes, episode 4, called Up Your Writing Game. These episodes, if you have a chance to look at them on YouTube, if you have not been with us that long and you haven't seen this one in a long time, this is pretty funny because at least the first 10 to 12 episodes, in terms of quality, were not super amazing. I was just kind of learning how to do podcasting. It was a random idea I had more than 2 years ago. And I just really like being able to dole out some bite-sized writing tips and productivity tips each week. So this is why I've stuck with it. But I think that episode resonates. And I know that downloads, a lot of times podcasts in the older episodes get lots of downloads because more people have been listening for longer. But in this case, I think a lot of people do want to know, what can you do to get more out of your writing? What can you do to make writing more productive? And I didn't go back and listen to this episode, but I suspect a lot of the advice I would give on this point might be somewhat the same. And one of the things I may not have said then, but I definitely recognize now over doing these 200 episodes, is that we have to constantly pay attention to our academic writing. It's not that we can get one system and keep using it over and over again, ad infinitum through all of the semesters we teach and the different stages of our careers or the different positions we have. One of the things with upping a writing game is constantly paying attention to what semester is it? What week am I in this semester? What is the project mix that I want to work with? I talk a lot about writing project mix. What are the things you want to work on at any given time out of all of your available choices? So, flexibility is certainly something that you can get in there to up your game, but there's lots of other practices that would work. So, particularly in this episode, I know I talk through lots of different ways to spend a little bit more time with your writing to make sure that it's a little bit more fun to do. Some of these are just general strategies, but over the last 100 episodes, I know that I've talked a lot about making sure that you're making the decisions about writing. So you already know what projects you want to work on, and you already know about how many hours you want to write per week. And all of those things go into upping your writing game as well. So you can go back and listen to that one. It's kind of a fun, throwback episode. So that was episode 4, Up Your Writing Game. And for anybody watching on YouTube, what I'm showing on here, and actually for audio listeners, is all the different ways you can get our podcast. So this one is showing a YouTube screenshot of looking at it. And about half of the episodes that I do have YouTube videos that are used. Well, all the episodes have YouTube videos. We stream on that platform as well. But ones that actually have slides that go with them, at least half of them do, where I'm actually showing a writing strategy, images and things like that. So they're always worth looking at in both audio and video. I think that's another way that you can get the information. The ones that we use in our workshops and that we reference for teaching purposes, all of those have visuals in YouTube. So if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, it's a good way to look at these episodes as well. Another bonus in YouTube, you can go to playlists and you can find several of our playlists, for example, all the episodes on dissertations. So number 4 was episode number 132, and this was preemptive planning for the fall semester for academic parents. This is a topic I've talked about many times on the podcast. I am an academic parent. I've had children throughout most of my academic career. I did have a couple of years as an assistant professor without children yet, but pretty much my career and my children have grown up together. And I know that academic parents a lot of times have specific challenges all year, but particularly in the fall. So, for example, fall semester, sometimes the children's school schedule doesn't line up with your school schedule. So you have to figure something out. This happened to me multiple years where I had to go back to work a full 2 weeks before my children had to be back in school. So that required, figuring out some childcare and so on. But there were all kinds of other things. For example, August for many parents, end of July, early August for many parents, particularly in the US, is a pretty expensive time of year when you're outfitting kids to go back to school. And if we have school-age children at home, those are all errands that have to be run, all those kinds of things right at the same time many semesters are starting in the US. So I know some of our European institutions start later, so sometimes this won't line up in quite the same way. But we also talked about a lot of time management skills. So, for example, if maybe you were fortunate that you were able to have a little bit more flexibility in the summer, if you had children at home, going back to a full schedule where you're back at work, they're back in school, and figuring that out just requires a lot of logistics. So I'm not at all surprised that number 4 was one of our episodes here. This one looks like it is an Apple Podcasts screenshot that I'm showing on YouTube, so you can see what it looks like getting it in that venue. For number 3, our episode, this is another old one, our oldest episode in the top 5, and it's called Get Your Writing Rhythm. And I know this episode well because this is something I talk about a lot, that with clients that we coach in our one-on-one coaching, with universities that we work with, a lot of faculty don't have a writing rhythm. And so that means all kinds of things. It means, do they have a regular time to write? Do they have a routine of entering into the writing process and an exit process, a way to close a writing session? So I've done episodes on all of those things: opening a writing session, closing a writing session. But for this one was really kind of talking about how to get that feeling about getting into a writing rhythm. So when you know that you're starting to make some progress on your work, you're actually not recreating how you do writing every single week. This episode offers some strategies for starting to figure that out. And for the record, many scholarly writers never figure this out. They never get a real writing rhythm. It helps if you have one, and it certainly makes academic writing easier. And it is something to strive for. But one of the things that I also recognize, and I talk a lot about this, that's why we do so many planning episodes, is that every semester is different. Every time in the semester is different. So you might have a great writing rhythm for the first 6 weeks of the fall when you have this really high amount of new academic year energy. But as soon as you get those first midterm exams that you're grading, or as soon as the holidays start coming up, when we start getting into American Thanksgiving or several of the holidays that we celebrate in December all over the world, those are all things that can disrupt a writing rhythm. So this is a good episode if you don't have one, just to kind of think through some strategies to try to determine what are some practices I could be doing that would get me more in the habit of writing, whether it's 2 days a week, whether it's every day, whether it's, once every 2 weeks, but also what am I doing when I sit down and write? So this screenshot that I'm showing is from Libsyn. So you can also download our podcast from Libsyn. And when you Google us for Defend, Publish, and Lead podcasts, often Libsyn is the first link you'll get. So this one's nice. It's got all the links to other ways that you can find out about us. So for example, on X, you can look at some of our information there. Number 2 is episode 66, called Final Push Dissertation Writing. So this was part of a series of several episodes I did on final push dissertation, meaning what do you do when you're in the last, couple months of getting that dissertation written? And I gave episodes on how to do the writing, how to do some problem solving, and so on. So this was a popular episode. Many of our dissertation episodes are. But in this case, it was basically talking about how do you get over that hump of the last couple months to get your dissertation complete so you get out the door, so you graduate. So this topic is understandably popular. This is another one that I'm showing just on a quick screenshot of YouTube, but definitely a good one to listen to because I would argue the strategies for dissertation writing at the beginning differ greatly from the strategies you might be using near the end. Because especially near the end, as a little sneak peek, that involves a fair bit of compromise, a fair bit of, okay, what can I do at this stage to get this dissertation done? It is now not perfect. It probably doesn't look the way I imagined it would be, but I still want to get it complete. How do I do that? Episode 66 talks about that. And then finally, episode number 1, it was podcast episode 118, Summer Writing Planning, Part 2, Mapping Projects to Days. So this was also part of a series on getting some writing completed in the summer. And I will say that episodes on summer writing in general and getting work done over the summer are pretty popular. Many of them showed up in our top 30. But this one, it was a longer episode and it was a little bit longer. So not super long. It was only 18 minutes or 18 and a half minutes. But this episode is popular because it talks about a strategy I do in many of our planning workshops where we talk about how to think through the time that's available. So if we're talking about writing over the summer, figuring out, okay, what days in the summer am I actually going to be able to do some writing? So making some decisions ahead of time, meaning, okay, there's going to be some days in here I'm not going to write at all. I'm just going to put a big X through those calendar blocks saying, I recognize right now no writing is going to happen on, July 3rd or whatever the day is. And then the second part, so this was, I think that was the first part, that was probably episode 117, but episode 118, where we're mapping projects to days, this is really important this is sort of like high level writing productivity planning, because what you're trying to figure out is, let's say you want to knock out 3 projects during the summer. A lot of us will just go in order. Like, I'll work on the first one until I'll get finished, and then I'll work on the second one until I'll get finished, and so on. But it's more strategic to say, all right, what are the projects I want to do? And then let me look at these available time frames. So one of the things I know in that episode I talked about was this idea about maybe in some part of the summer, I have a bigger chunk. Well, I probably want to put the harder project or the project that's going to take more time or more thinking in that slot, and maybe a small project, a project I just want to complete. I sometimes call these completion projects. Maybe with that project, I want to put that in like a 4-day stretch between 2 blocks of time not being able to write, and I'll really lean in and get this project completed. So it's a very strategic oriented episode. This is a good one where you can use a Google template. So that was something in 118 that I talked through, using one that's already pre-existing. You can go and get that when you take a look at this episode. So this is a good one on YouTube. And actually on the screen, I'm showing it on Spotify because our episodes are all available there if you're a Spotify listener as well. But I understand why this episode is a popular one, because pretty much almost all of the planning ones where we talk about real strategic time use at a specific time of year, many of those episodes show up in our top 30. So I hear that this is, I'm looking at the types of listens that we have and the downloads, and I see that a lot of people are finding these episodes really helpful. So here's a message out to everyone that does listen to us. I'm always looking for new episode topics. So if you want to email me, Christine@defendpublishandlead.com, suggest an episode topic. I'd love to, have some of these crowdsourced for the next 100 that we're going to do. We definitely have more interviews coming up with people that have written books about writing productivity. Many of the books, and I've said this on episodes before, don't really work for me. I like to think about productivity in a completely different way than I think some of the old standbys in writing advice deal with. So for example, advice to write every single day. I know as an academic parent, that does not work for me. I have to work in kind of strategic time on work days when children are at school, kind of in these different chunks. I can't write every single day because weekends don't work out for me. Many of our writers are not able, they do not have the luxury to write every day. So that type of writing advice, while it works great for some people, and that's wonderful, for the majority of scholars that we work with and the majority of people that we found in institutions where we do our workshops, that's just not a reality. So you have to think through, okay, well, what are some other ways I could get writing done? Maybe it's that you have 4 hours on a Monday and 2 hours on a Thursday, and that's all the writing time you have during the week. So one of the things that we look at during our individual writing coaching with time, if this is something that you're interested in looking at with us, we can really strategically look and say, okay, when have you been doing writing? Why isn't it happening? Where are some spots it could go? And what are the most likely places where it will actually happen? So we have to think about things like your energy. You don't want to do any writing at the end of a workday, usually, unless you find that as a relaxing break. Some people cannot pull off late afternoon writing, for example, others can. So it really is dependent on the individual. And so some of the coaching we do with time is really helpful, I think, in this manner. But episode 118 is a really good one to look at for next level planning to try to figure out how to map some writing projects to specific days. And I would argue you could use it at any point in any semester. Summer is a little bit more flexible, so there might be bigger, longer blocks, but the idea is still the same. So to celebrate our 200th episode, we have an upcoming workshop on Friday, November 15th. So if you're listening to this, this is in 2024. If you're discovering us much later on, but Friday, November 15th at noon, we have a writing workshop called Getting Your Reading into Your Scholarly Writing. All of our workshops are recorded, so people overseas or people that are teaching during that time, you can get the recording with registering. What this workshop is going to do is talk through how you actually work with source material in your writing. So for example, if you have read some source material, you took some good notes, how do you actually get those notes into your writing? So for example, if you wrote on a scholarly article, how do you take those notes and actually move them into the writing you're doing? And we're actually going to do that in the workshop. So for example, if you've got some writing, you've got some sources, and it's just kind of a big mess, and you want to really make sure those sources are getting into your writing in the most effective way possible, this workshop is for you. It's hands-on. It's for an hour. We're going to walk through 5 strategies to do it, where you can get some time to go ahead and do those insertions. And we'll also talk a lot about synthesis. So how do you make sure, if you're putting sources into your writing, and this is really for anybody, new graduate students to, longtime career people, how do you know that a quote is better than a paraphrase, or a string citation is better than a quote? And once you're putting in that source material, how are you making sure your voice is wrapped around that to make sure that you actually have used those sources to support your argument or to build your project? So often we see with clients is that many times sources are put in there as like an information dump, or there's a hesitancy or imposter syndrome saying that, oh, this source says it so much better than I could. We'll work with all of those things in that workshop. And as our happy 200th episode, the first 10 people who listen to this episode and register for it will get this workshop for free with the code 200. So 200. This workshop is normally $30. So our workshops, we try to keep all of our offerings, just as a fun fact about Defend, Publish, and Lead. We try to keep all of our offerings $60 US or less. Even though all of these workshops are taught by PhD trained writing coaches who run graduate programs, who do speaking engagements for far more, this is a little bit of a labor of love for us to do it. So we always keep them a little bit less. But anybody who hears this episode, if you're one of the first 10 people to register with the code 200, you can get this workshop for free. So happy 200th. I hope you are one of the first 10 people and you're listening to it. If not, there are a couple other discount codes going. If you email me at Christine at Defend, Publish, and Lead, or you hear this episode 6 months from now when this is over, but you really want this recording, you can always come back to us for any of our workshop past recordings and work with me to get it. Another thing I want to point out, if you're new to us or just haven't really taken advantage of the opportunity, but we do offer free 30-minute consultations for new clients. So our website is Defend, Publish, and Lead. And there's an orange button on the front page that says schedule a free consultation. If you click it, you're able to work with us directly. And I would argue that this is a good way to just find out if we're a good match for you, but we also actually solve a problem in the 30 minutes. So you can bring you can bring a problem to that session ask for help with that. And then for some people, they take that information and go on their merry way. Other people book us for an hour or 2 hours to just solve a specific challenge. So, for example, setting up a spring 2025 semester plan, that's a really popular thing that people will just buy an hour of time with us to do that. And then they go on their merry way and do their writing. Otherwise, you might find that you want to work with one of our coaches more directly. So all of those are available to you, and happy 200th episode and writing this week.